welcome. It's an interesting time to be on this planet, and I hope you all had a really great week. This is part 3 of a conversation that I've been having with you guys about truth and what is truth. And this was in response to looking at all the different perspectives and viewpoints that are being played out in the conversations that I have with people in our community, online especially. And I wanted to answer in maybe a too long-winded way, answer the question that I get a lot from people, which is, how do you know what's right for you? You know, the thing that's so beautiful about human design is that it gives you a hack, if you will, to knowing what's true and right for you. And as you're going to see in today's show, we have a tendency to want to make it really complicated, which I actually kind of find amusing, because in reality, the answer to the question is, how do you know if it's right for you, is going to be, does it feel good? Is it fun? Does it bring you joy? Does it crack your heart open? And if that's the answer, then it probably is true and right. If you read it and it's heavy and it's dark and it inspires a sort of frenetic panic in you, it might be an interesting place for you to explore. Why are you having the response that you're having to whatever it is that you're seeing, witnessing, hearing, engaging in? I do want to invite you, if you haven't watched it last week, to go back and watch the show that I did about control dynamics. It is a really good foundational understanding for what I'm going to talk about today. And I am not going to talk about today motivation and transference, because I look at the chart very differently. And what I know from understanding human design, in conjunction with being a coach for my entire adult life and a nurse and being trained in psychiatric nursing, and what drives and motivates people, is that there's not a simple formula for what drives and motivates people. We have to go beyond the mechanics of a couple of things in the chart. So we're going to look more at the overall arc of the human story. Talking about motivation and drivers and transference is a really great topic that I may leave to another show at another time sometime soon, because it's something that's been coming up for me to talk about with you guys a lot lately, that I think that would be kind of a fun topic for us to go on. All right, so welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. What is truth? Part 3. And I want to set the tone for part 3 by giving you a statement that I think actually is inherent in human design. And it's something that I think we forget sometimes. We have this tendency to use all these little catchphrases, buzz phrases, right? Things like as above, so below, right? Or we say things like, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, or the way I like to say it is, we're spiritual beings living in a human story. And anytime we start to phrase it that way, and we're going to talk a little bit today about why language is so important. Anytime we start to phrase it that way, it sort of starts to set us up to have an interior and an exterior reality. And the spiritual life that we pursue, the spiritual insights and understandings we pursue, are sort of this thing we do on the side, even in traditional religions in some ways. I'm not saying that's necessarily how the doctrines are set up, but even in traditional religions, sometimes we have like one day set aside for our spiritual life, like we have a Sabbath or a Shabbat or whatever, right? And this spiritual part of our life is just this separate little thing. We classify it separately. We measure it separately. We ask people, so how's your spiritual life? I want to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a spiritual experience, and even your human story is a spiritual experience, and there is no inner and outer or above and below. This is why the mythology of ascension is, I think, so tricky, because ascension, sometimes in the way in which we talk about it, is like this thing where we go beyond the experience that we're having. And I actually believe that ascension is really more about descension, getting here and being fully present, than it is about leaving or transcending beyond the human story. I think that ascension is really about expanding yourself to consciously choose the highest potential expression of the human condition. But that's my opinion. You are, and this is probably the most important thing I want you to walk away with today, you are allowed to define for yourself your own truth within a couple of limiting parameters, which I'll lay out for you as we go through this. So if we can understand that we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, then what we start to see is that we're living in a matrix, a third dimensional matrix, which is third dimensional, which means it's basically slowed down frequencies, a slowed down frequency that's kind of slow, that has associated with it some interesting concepts like location, right? In the third dimension, we have here and there, above, below. That's actually not true when we get outside of this dimensional thinking. When we go fifth dimension, sixth dimensional thinking, quantum thinking, there is no measurement of location. In this dimension, in this awareness, we have simply this slowed down version of this quantum field that we're experiencing in this very tangible, physical, sensual way. And the way in which we engage with this matrix, if you will, is through archetypes. Everything in our life is really kind of just a metaphorical representation of consciousness. It's got some cool bells and whistles, right? It's got microphones, laptops, diamond rings, all kinds of things like that. But everything in this life that you're living is really a metaphorical representation of consciousness. Now, I want to be really mindful as I invite you to think about this and explore this in the context of what is truth. That the consciousness that you are experiencing, you have sort of your personal consciousness, your personal interpretation of the consciousness. You have your personal interpretation of the space between the moment something happens and the moment you either choose to deliberately create or react to it. But also the environment that we're in, because we're all connected and we all create non-locally, is not only just a manifestation of your consciousness, boom, your reality, which is, I think, an important thing for us to all remember at this place on the planet, but that the experience that we are having of reality, including our individual viewpoints, is a combination of multiple manifestations of multiple aspects of the divine, your divine siblings, your brothers and sisters, your fellow humans, there, and actually I might even say maybe even the animals in our life a little bit, that we are experiencing entangled hierarchy or tangled hierarchy, meaning the world in which you're experiencing, the world that you are living in, the stories and the metaphors we're enmeshed in and we're swimming in that are basically reflecting back to us where we are with consciousness is a co-creation of everyone on the planet. And for us to change the planet, for us to create a different experience of reality, we have to first start by shifting our own experience, our own consciousness, our own expectations of reality, and then trust that as we gain critical mass, when we connect with other people who share similar dreams, intentions, visions around reality, that we can create a wave of energy that causes a different metaphor, a different story, that's a different expression of our shift and change in consciousness to manifest. That's the crux of what we're going to be doing on this planet for the next 7 years, maybe 10 years. We are right now, we're in the midst of an evolutionary cycle that is dismantling all of those old entanglements, all those old hierarchies, the metaphor, the stories we've been living and experiencing and telling that say there's a finite amount of resources, we all got to grab our fair share, we create from a place of fear and lack, and our value is determined by a weird set of numerical metrics. We're erasing that program. We're erasing those stories. But to do that means we got to take apart all the things we built around those stories. And we are beginning to come together now as we keep moving things out of the way. And we still have some moving to do. we're beginning to come together with a new story, a new set of understandings, a new consciousness that says there's more than enough for everyone. Let's look at how we can distribute it equitably, sustainably, peacefully, justly with each other. And let's see what we can build now from this idea that there's more than enough. And through our conscious harnessing of vibrational frequencies, we can actually create more than enough abundance in every way. We talked about in part 1 of this program, the idea that your earth consciousness, linear time, your manifested potential is all based on the meanings you have about the stories, the experiences you've had in your life. And that your interpretation of those experiences are influenced by your conditioning. And that conditioning field, that's the stripe in pink on this slide, is really kind of a filter through which we tap into the infinite realm, the cosmic plan, timelessness that is filled with lots and lots and lots, an innumerable amount of possibilities and potentials. And our intuition, our ability to transcend or leap over our conditioning, allows us to see the bigger vision, the bigger purpose, the bigger perspective of who we are, both individually and collectively, and who we could become, both individually and collectively. That sense that I suspect that all of you listening to this call have, that we're about to create something bigger, better. That intuitive sense that says, maybe we've entered a global cycle where we got to buckle our seatbelt a little bit because we're going to go through this interesting transition that's going to bring us to this new place. And maybe, hopefully for some of you, that sense of excitement about, I was born for this. This is the time I've been living for. This is the world I've been wanting to be a part of creating from the very start. Hopefully some of you are feeling that. You're having those memories of you as a 4-year-old being in the backyard of your house and looking up at the sky and thinking, oh my gosh, why am I here? Can I go home now? And that whatever voices, that whatever knowingness that was being nurtured in the soul of your essence, even as a small child, that said, no, wait, things are going to change and you're a part of this change. Hopefully, as you hear that call and you envision that excitement, that intuitive awareness that this time is about to come, hopefully that's going to carry you as you look at this storyline, this metaphorical storyline on the exterior. It's not really on the exterior, but on the exterior that's unfolding. That gives you perhaps hope that you have the power to choose and be aware and to interface and play with this reality in such a way that you can continue to influence it, moving it in the direction that your heart and soul longs for it to head towards. So you're literally living in a story. You're literally living in a metaphor. Now, in the human story, part of what makes us so unique as a living form on this planet is that we speak in language. Now, other creatures also speak in language in different ways. Did you guys know that crows and ravens have about 226 different calls? I love crows and ravens. So they have their own language, but there's something about words that are so vital. Words translate divine inspiration, and through the power of language gives us a template, a storyline, a plot outline, if you will, around which we begin to build our tangible experiential reality. That's the power of the throat center. In the second quarter of the Human Design Year, and the Human Design Year is split into 4 quarters, we just left the second quarter. The second quarter features the sun moving through all of the gates of the throat center. What we are tasked to do in the second quarter of the Human Design Year is to put language, words to all of our dreams. And that language becomes a template upon which we begin to hang and direct our actions. That throat center is the center for communication, but it's the power of communication and the power of language that actually creates the role of manifestation that the throat center also plays an integral part in. The other thing that's so powerful is that language literally informs our DNA. This is powerful, powerful new research that I personally think, and of course, I'm a geek about this stuff, but I think is utterly mind-blowing. So in recent years, Russian scientists have been embarking on groundbreaking DNA research, and they've made a stunning scientific discovery. In an astonishing experiment, these scientists discovered that the human body's DNA can easily be reprogrammed by human speech. According to them, DNA is not only responsible for the construction of our body, but also serves as a data storage and communication. These Russian linguists found that the genetic code, especially in the apparently useless junk DNA, follows the same rules as all our human languages. To this end, they compared the rules of syntax, which is the way in which words are put together to form phrases and sentences, semantics, the study of the meaning of language forms, and the basic rules of grammar. They found that the alkalins of our DNA follow a regular grammar and do have a set of rules just like our languages. So human language really might not have just been a coincidence, but actually a reflection of our inherent DNA. So here's the kicker. They actually took DNA, and usually when we splice DNA, you do it rather mechanically. So if you're going to cut DNA and you're going to put it together or do things in the lab that I actually think we should not be doing, but they actually said, okay, if DNA is programmed by syntax and language, how can we see, let's see how this syntax of language impacts DNA, and let's see if we can use it as a tool. So they use language programmed into radio frequencies to literally change or splice DNA. That's a very, 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 very gross summary of this research. But the bottom line here is that the syntax of language is so powerful that you can literally change gene codes with it. You can change gene regulation with it. You can splice DNA with the energy of language, with the syntax, the rhythm, the form, the energy frequency of language. When we look at the way in which our ability to, may I lovingly and gently say, recklessly use language in a world that now can deliver information like this, maybe even faster than this, and we think about the potential that language can impact us on a genetic level, it can impact our DNA, it behooves us, as we are sorting through the amount of information that's bombarding us constantly, and maybe we're even participating in transmitting and sharing information, that before we push the send button or before we start sharing something that maybe we don't even know is true, maybe we didn't even read the entire article, but we're just sharing the headline or the picture, that we're doing more than just spreading misinformation. We're adding to the potential for confusion and a disruption of the potential of the full expression of our human condition. And as we go through the rest of this program, I want to bring you back to a loving and gentle reminder of the truth of who we are. So, syntax is how you say what you say. Here's what scientists also discovered, and actually this is a big part of the research that I've been doing for the last couple of years. Do you want to know what the most powerful sentence in the world starts with? It starts with the phrase, I am. I am. The stories we tell about who we are, the narrative we use to define who we are, sets the tone and the direction for our life. It impacts us on a genetic level. It carries the history and the story of who we are throughout time. And most importantly, or not most importantly, but in conjunction with that, it doesn't only affect yourself, it actually has the power to change the energy and the world around you. This is the power of this sentence. So if we're going to really understand the power of the narrative, who am I? We really have to be mindful, and this is the power of being deliberate, of defining who we are. So, when we look at this, you're essentially, in your experience, you're essentially perceiving yourself as being your conditioning field. That stuff that you carry in your conditioning field, your memories, the artifacts of all the feelings that you've had, your ancestral lineage, the genetic code that you carry, your human design, and the way in which your energy field works, who you were around growing up, the experiences that you've had in your life, all of that creates in you a story that you're creating from with this I am power, right? That you have, that is you. If what you're creating isn't really speaking to the heart of who you are or the potential of who you are, the most important thing to start accessing a different place of truth and being able to sort through the information through a different lens of awareness is we have to start first by shifting the story we tell about ourselves. And then ultimately, as we solidify within our own being the story about who we are, the true story about who we are, then we can begin the process then of also telling a different story about who we are together. You can't have a clear connection to the true story of who you are if you haven't healed your own trauma. Now, I've been talking about trauma again in many, many shows all year. So if you're sort of feeling like, wow, there's something in here for me, maybe I need to unpack some trauma. Maybe I need to look at how potentially the stories I'm telling that are rooted in my own traumatic experiences might be influencing the story I hold about who I am and maybe causing me to get confused about what is truth or not. Go check out some of the programs that we've done over the year about trauma and integrity. On our website, quantumalignmentsystem.com, we use a system of integrated healing that blends human design with energy psychology and coaching and subtle body therapies. That system is called the Quantum Alignment System. It's a patented system that has scientific evidence of its efficacy in shifting you on multiple levels, including on a genetic level. I personally believe that clearing our own trauma is the most important work we all need to be doing right now so that we can be speaking into and living from a personal story that is the reflection of our highest potential truth. Now, if you've been following me in the stories I've been telling about trauma all year, you know that one of the things that I believe in strongly is that the definition we have of trauma is not big enough. In fact, this is what my TED Talk is about in September, on September 19th. I'm speaking at TEDx Colorado Springs, and I'm going to be talking about redefining trauma. If to me, and this is based on the work that I've done again with my clients for the last 25 years, trauma is any event, experience, or perception that causes us to doubt our value and lose our connection with our right place in the world. So if you have had any experience that's caused you to lose connection with your value and lose connection with those unique gifts, those vital, irreplaceable, unique gifts that only you can bring to the world, then maybe you are carrying some of the energy of trauma in your conditioning field, in that pink line. And that holding on to that trauma is keeping you stuck in a narrative, in a metaphor, in a story that isn't allowing you to see the bigger version of truth that's out there, that's available. When we create or live from trauma, it causes us to be reactive. We drop into the amygdala, the primal brain, and we react to situations from old conditioned patterns as a way of protecting ourselves, as a way of instinctually responding to things that maybe feel threatening or frightening to us. One of the beauties of where we are, one of the beautiful things of where we are evolutionarily speaking, is that we have been building a new skill set that is teaching us and helping us and supporting us in allowing us to increase what I'll call the pause. The pause, this actually comes from a quotation from Viktor Frankl, the pause between stimulus and response. When we are reacting from trauma, when there is a stimulus, we immediately respond reactively. We react to the stimulus. The more we clear our trauma, the more there's a space between the stimulus and how we choose to create with it. And we can move beyond reactivity to consciously and deliberately experience an event and say, okay, I'm not going to live from that pattern anymore. I'm now going to ask myself, what else is possible here? And from that question, I'm going to expand the potential of what I could be creating, maybe create something that's more in alignment with the true story, the true narrative of who I am, and change the world by being deliberate instead of reactive. Think about that when you scroll down your Facebook feed. Or here's what happens to me, just so that you know that you may not be the only one on the planet doing this. Sometimes, not unfrequently, I get emails from people either giving me unsolicited advice or criticizing me, or sometimes sending me curse words because they think I send too many emails. And if I don't take a breath and be deliberate in my response, and I will sometimes craft really mean emails back, right? And then I have to go, wait, no, I'm not going to send that. Deep breath. And then I go and I find the person's email address and I unsubscribe them. But before I unsubscribe them, I send them a little note saying, thank you. And we move on. But it takes training and practice sometimes to break those reactive patterns and drop into that space where you are deliberately responding from a place of love and expansion instead of, right? All right, I've been threatening to talk about this for the last two shows. I said I would talk about this in the last show, and I really didn't. And I said at the end of the first show that I'd talk about this. So I am going to throw this in here because, in a way, I do believe this topic goes back to answering the question, what is truth? So we're going to explore in greater depth unmet energy needs, human design, and understanding why sometimes our unmet energy needs and the trauma that ensues as a result of our unmet energy needs causes us to be reactive. So let's talk about for a minute. We talked about this a little bit in the first part, but let's review this. Anytime we have unmet energy needs, and we all have them, when you understand the nature of how your chart functions and how your energy is configured, your chart has specific energy needs. So some of the energy needs for the manifester includes, for example, it includes the need for power. Same thing for the manifesting generator. Usually generators, projectors, and reflectors have a certain amount of need for recognition and attention. These are not character flaws. These are not problems in a personality. These are not dysfunctions, usually, until we have the experience of going out into the world as small, innocent children with our uniquely configured energy needs and experiencing in response to our needs, people pushing back on us, telling us, oh, it's not okay for you to have these needs. If we don't learn how to, in a healthy way, get our energy needs met as children, we tend to devolve to sort of unconscious, and I'm saying this really deliberately, unconscious, you're not doing this on purpose, unconscious energy behaviors, manipulations, or what I like to call mistaken motivations, as a way of getting your energy needs met inappropriately. So if you don't know how to appropriately be able to say things like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit disconnected from you right now, and I'm feeling like I need some attention. If you don't learn to ask for that, or you're not allowed to ask for that in a healthy way, you might learn instead that, hey, I'm feeling neglected here. We haven't connected. You've been too busy on your phone all day long. I'm going to go do something inappropriate to get your attention. So maybe I'm going to pick a fight. Or maybe I'm going to be annoying. Maybe I'm going to try to boss you around. And all of those manipulative things that I might be doing might be things that I learned to do as a way of getting recognition and attention because I didn't learn as a small person to say, hey, can we spend some time together? I'm really missing you. When we have mistaken motivations, and I would say that I will lay money on, we all have them. So this isn't big, it's not a big, huge deal. We all have them. Very few of us learn how to say things like, hey, I need to get a little bit more power in this situation. Or, hey, I really need to get a little bit more attention. Or, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. Can you help me? Most of us don't learn how to ask those things in a healthy way. When we don't learn to ask them in a healthy way, as I said, we create these mistaken motivations. And these mistaken motivations in partnerships, in relationships, start to create these dynamics, these ping pong dynamics where you do something because you have an unmet energy need, and it triggers your partner because they also have unmet energy needs, and now they're reacting from their unmet energy needs, and you're reacting from your hurt that you didn't get your unmet energy needs met, and then they're reacting because they're hurt because they didn't get their unmet energy needs met, and all of a sudden you have conflict in the partnership, and you think it's about this thing over here, but it's really not. It's really about these unmet energy needs that are just crying for whatever it is that they need to feel fulfilled, to get their energy cup settled, filled, fulfilled. There are 4 mistaken motivations. When you are living out a mistaken motivation, it triggers a specific emotional response in the person you're doing it with. So one of the mistaken motivations is the mistaken motivation of attention. Most of us, some way, shape, or form, grew up with a message that if we needed attention, we were annoying, right? We were told, no, not now. I'm in the middle of doing something else. Or maybe some of us who are a little bit older, we learned from growing up that children are seen and not heard, right? Like, where did that come from? The total prescription for creating the mistaken motivation of attention, right? When you're a kid and you need attention and you're not getting attention appropriately, you learn to do things to get attention inappropriately. And usually what that does is it makes your parents feel irritated or annoyed, right? So if you think about a fly, you're sitting at dinner table and there's a fly at the dinner table buzzing around and the fly is buzzing around, it's irritating and annoying, right? And you're going to go chase it with the fly swat. And if you're a more empathic person, you're going to shoo it out of your house, right? Or if you're like me, you're going to get a fly swatter and smash it because flies are gross, right? You're going to give that fly some kind of attention because that irritation demands attention. So we learn when we have the mistaken motivation of attention unconsciously, you're not doing this consciously, to do things that irritate the people around you, because when they irritate you, they give you attention. And to children, not getting negative attention is better than not getting any attention at all. As we grow into adulthood, we oftentimes don't unlearn these patterns. We just get more sophisticated in how we live them out. And it creates these dynamics that make it difficult for us to see the truth of what's really going on in the dynamic. So there are 4 mistaken motivations: attention, power, inadequacy, and revenge. These are all rooted, as I said, in unmet energy needs. If you're in a relationship with someone or you have children, how their behavior makes you feel is going to let you know what the unmet energy need is. So don't look at, oh, they are doing this, it looks like this. Don't look at the behavior by how it looks. Go with, how is this behavior making me feel? How am I reacting to it? And when you start to go, oh, I'm feeling irritated and annoyed, now you can go, in this pause between reaction and being deliberate, right? Knowing what's really true and reacting to things creating deliberately from a more truthfully aligned place, you can now go, this person really needs some recognition and attention. Instead of me going, you're annoying me, I can now go, what's a really loving way that I can be fully present to this person so that their need for recognition is met? So if you are dealing with somebody who has the mistaken motivation of attention, they will make you feel irritated and annoyed. If you have somebody in your life who's doing the mistaken motivation of power, you're going to be locked in power struggle with them. You're going to want to overpower them. Last week when we talked, or last part 2, a lot of what we talked about in control dynamics was the mistaken motivation of power. Sometimes people feel inadequate, and that inadequacy creates in us an emotional response of either pity or codependency. right? We feel sorry for somebody. We think, oh, they can't do this for themselves. I'll just do it for them. Revenge, which is the final mistaken motivation. When somebody is doing revenge, they're usually doing revenge because they really deeply question their lovability. And they have learned a pattern of, if I hurt somebody and they react to my hurting them, then even though they're maybe reacting by hurting me back, at least they still love me. At least I still have a little bit of an inroad here to their heart, enough of an inroad here that I can still hurt them. So that's hopeful that maybe there's love there. So people sometimes do revenge. Usually revenge, by the way, happens more after you've been in a relationship for a while and there's stuff that's built up that hasn't gotten dealt with, right? And when somebody does revenge, we tend to want to hurt somebody back. That's how we feel when our loved ones are doing the mistaken motivation of revenge. So let's start first with the mistaken motivation of attention. People who are participating in the mistaken motivation of attention feel like they are a nuisance. They may show off, or when you were in school, this was the class clown. They may be lazy, because when you have a lazy person, you have to coax them and drag them out and remind them, right? That gets you hooked into an attention dynamic. They may be hyperactive. They will associate love with attention. If you don't have time for them and you're not paying attention to them, then they don't feel loved. They can whine, or sometimes, and this is the one, especially as women, we as women tend to fall into, we learn to get recognition and attention from being good, right? So we become people pleasers. We're super ultra nice, and that's our way of getting recognition and attention. Some attention markers in the chart. This is tendencies. Everybody can do any of the 4 mistaken motivations, but when we look at it from a chart perspective, I see correlations between these configurations and the different mistaken motivations. So if you have an open throat center or a non-motorized throat center in the case of a generator, or in some projector configurations, projectors, reflectors, and sometimes generators, having an open G center, that'll be half of you, because we have an open G center, we question our lovability and we think, oh, if I get attention, they love me, right? And a defined G center with a connection to the throat. When you have a defined G center with a connection to the throat, you need good attention. You need somebody who really can see you. If you don't have a connection to the throat, maybe you're immune to the mistaken motivation of attention. Probably not. The mistaken motivation of power. When somebody has the mistaken motivation of power, you might experience them as stubborn. You might experience them as being argumentative. You might experience them as somebody who feels like they always have to win, or they have to always have the last say, right? If you work out something with them on text, they always have to be the last one to send the text message back. They have to have the last word. They can lie, cheat, and steal if you can't get what you want honestly, and then you can go into a breach of moral integrity and take it. Or they can be openly disobedient or defiant. Power markers in the chart. Again, these are tendencies, not these are correlations and tendencies. These are not like manifestors have this, defined will centers have this, okay? These are just tendencies to contemplate. The manifestor and manifesting generators both have a high need for self-empowerment and self-direction. The defined will center, same thing. The channel 4521, especially because there's a certain amount of control in that channel. Emotional definition can sometimes be perceived as power when we are not understanding the way in which we use that emotional energy, and we're blowing it up in other people's faces when we're either high or low in our wave. And the channel 2838, which historically has a tendency sometimes to be a little stubborn. The mistaken motivation of inadequacy. Say that 5 times fast. People who feel inadequate have features in the chart sometimes that can create the sense or the experience of overwhelm. And that overwhelm sometimes makes it difficult for them to figure out in a sequential ordered way what's the next right step. So when people are experiencing the mistaken motivation of inadequacy, they may act like they just want to be left alone, but they don't. when they may act helpless. They might feel stupid in comparison to others. They might give up and not participate in activities. I sometimes call this failing in advance. If you think you're going to fail, then you just don't participate in the first place. Or they set goals that are too high and they refuse to do things that measure up to these goals, which is, again, kind of failing in advance. Some inadequacy markers in the chart, the gate 48. Anything in the sensing circuit, because it's right brain dominant and it's very sensual and experiential and holistic in the way it interprets the world. And so it's hard sometimes for right brain dominant people to translate data and steps in sequence, in linear sequence. An open spleen sometimes, an open root sometimes. The overwhelm from the open root comes from the pressure. Same thing for the open head. And the open G center, because the open G center has a lot of different directions that it can go in. And if it's not in the right place, if you have an open G center and you're not in the right place with the right people, it can feel overwhelming because you don't know what to do and where to go, and you're not getting a clear signal of what's the next right step. Revenge. And I put revenge here today because honestly, when I read Facebook right now, I feel like there's a lot of people doing this mistaken motivation on Facebook. That's that reckless sharing without thinking about, hey, is this true? Or how's this going to land? Or should I say this? Or, I mean, I don't know how you guys are. I'm really cautious at this point about what I post on Facebook. The troll, the troll response from people sometimes. It's like, wait, why are you saying these terrible things? Revenge is rooted in questioning your lovability. When people question their lovability, they do the mistaken motivation of revenge. They want to hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. That's why healing is so important, because healed people heal people. The mistaken motivation of revenge is oftentimes demonstrated with stealing, viciousness. Sometimes these are people who will hurt animals, children, or themselves. There's often blaming others for their unfairness. They believe that no one likes them. They want to get even. They can sometimes make themselves be really unlikable just to demonstrate further how unlovable they are. And they can even feel like no one understands them. Again, remember, when somebody does the mistaken motivation of revenge, our initial reaction is to do it back, right? That's the reactive point. When we can increase that pause, that choice point between, oh, this is happening, breath, this person must be feeling really hurt / unlovable. What's the most conscious, aware perspective I can bring? What's the most conscious, aware response I can bring to this situation? And then respond to it deliberately can change the dynamic for someone quite significantly. Revenge markers in the chart include sometimes projectors. They question their lovability because they don't operate like everybody else and they get judged. Same thing for manifestors. And oftentimes the open G center. And I would even say, again, G center with a connection to the throat. If you have a defined G center and you have any channels that connect the yellow diamond to your throat, there is a tendency there for you to need to feel accepted for who you are. That's a very vulnerable configuration. And so when you have gotten criticism or hurt because of things people have said, you might react with the mistaken motivation of revenge. Also the gate 10. Also the channel 4037, because people can break your heart here because they don't live up to your expectations or the promises you thought that they made. Or, this is a joke, but anyone with a G center, defined or open, can question their lovability. The reason I say this is because I recently did not too recently at this point, but about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I did a survey of my database, my list. And I had about 1,000 respondents. And one of the questions that I asked my database was, do you love yourself? And 97% of the people who responded to my survey said they did not. That to me is a mind-blowing number. To me, it's a heartbreaking number. When you question your lovability, then it's very easy to react to the world with revenge as a motivation, because you need some kind of a blip, some kind of an energy force back, some kind of a lightning bolt of something back to remind you that, oh, there's an opening here. Some people maybe do care about me enough to at least react to me. I think it's a big issue on our planet right now. And the very first step that I think we can all take to heal this, to move ourselves closer to truth, is to learn to love ourselves better. So back to our little slide here. If you go back to, again, the pink field here, your sense of worthiness, your sense of lovability, your energy needs, your configuration for your energy needs, the stories that you have and the experiences that you have about whether these energy needs have been met appropriately or not, are all part of what you carry in this conditioning field. And they're influencing what you create and how you see the world, how you perceive what is true and not. So back to the question, who are you? You are love. You are love. The G center is the center for love and direction and our identity. We are love, literally. If we look at the quantum purpose of the G center, when we're looking at the bigger potential of what the G center is about, part of the function of the way in which the code in which we each carry in our G center for fulfillment in the world, for self-expression in the world, for the contribution of ourselves to the world, that code that we hold in our G center gives direction ultimately to love. It gives direction to sustainability. It gives direction to leadership. It gives direction to release and surrender. It gives direction to empowerment. It gives direction to spirit. It gives direction to embodiment. It gives direction to natural order and alignment and a deep connection with nature. It gives direction to compassion and to peace. That center holds the magnetic resonance field of the magnetic monopole, and we calibrate this G center and that magnetic resonance field with the quality of love that we hold in our story. If we look at the code in the G center, and this is true for all of you, whether you have things defined here or open, we're looking at a bird's eye view of the full potential of the center in each and every one of us. So this is relevant to each and every one of you. The direction your life takes is going to be influenced by the quality of love you have for yourself, by the quality of empowerment that you sense or feel over your own life, by the willingness and the freedom and the safety that you feel to fully express who you are, by the power that you assume over your own personal narrative in defining the story that tells the world about who you are and yourself about who you are. Your connection to spirit and source is going to influence the amount of love you're willing to let yourself receive from the bigger plane, so that you understand that not only are you an individuated aspect of the divine, somebody with a personal story, but that personal story is part of something bigger, and that you are here to serve that something bigger in a beautiful, expansive way in this story that you're living in right now. This G center is calibrated by how much you embody the spirit and the essence of who you are, and by how much you love and nurture and take care of your body. A healthy, vital body has a greater capacity and a deeper sense of purpose and direction, and a greater capacity to really serve that purpose. That G center, that direction you carry, that story you tell about yourself, also is influenced by how much you're willing to let yourself be supported, how much you're willing to allow yourself to receive, and by how much you're willing to know that you are valuable and precious enough, and what you have is so important that it's worthy of not only holding on to for yourself, but of sharing with the world, because your existence is what you're here to give the world. Your life purpose isn't about what you do. Your life purpose is about who you be and fully occupying the story that only you can occupy. So we just went through this. I'll go through this quickly. The gate 10 is the gate of love and self-love. The gate 7 is the gate of empowerment and collaboration. The gate 1 is the gate of self-expression. The gate 13 is the gate of narrative, telling your personal story. The gate 25, the love of spirit. The gate 26, the energy for embodiment. The gate 2, the energy for allowing and receiving. And the gate 15, the energy for compassion. The more we live out the high expression of these gates, the more we live in a full expression, a more embodiment of love, the more we tell a story about ourselves as being loving beings, which, if that's the story you're telling, that's the syntax you're giving your DNA, right? And when we give our DNA the syntax of love, using these words, we shift the frequency of our DNA. We actually expand the DNA, so its capacity to hold more light, literally, it holds photons, increases. It increases the resonance field around it. It increases the quality of the water molecules in your body, and it literally radiates out into the world and impacts others, so that when you are holding this higher frequency of light, you are radiating it out to others, and you are entraining lower frequencies up to the higher frequency of energy you are embodying. That is how you create. That is how we will create this world of equitable, sustainable, just peace. So these words, I am love, I am powerful, I am who I am forgiving, I am serving, I am vital, I am supported, I am compassionate. These are high frequency statements that actually, when you speak these statements to DNA in a jar, if it's floating in water in a jar, if you speak these statements to DNA, it actually causes the DNA to expand and be able to hold more amounts of light, greater amounts of photons. So use these words when you start to feel down and heavy, when you're like, what is truth? I don't know. These words are truth. When we encounter real truth, truth with a capital T, our frequency expands. Our DNA can hold higher grades of energy. Our ability to influence the environment around us by virtue of expanding our frequency elevates. Print this off. Put it also on your refrigerator. And use these words to consciously pull yourself forward in those moments when perhaps you're struggling to really tap into, who am I? And what is truth? The story you tell about who you think you are sets the tone for your life experiences and the direction that your life takes you. It also changes your DNA, your design crystal, which in turn calibrates the magnetic monopole to attract the experiences that match the code for your life. When you change your words, you change your story. You change your DNA, you change your life, and you change the world. Here is truth. This is truth. In case you forgot. We are love. We are powerful. We are who we are, and we get to define who we are. We are forgiving. We are serving. We are vital. We are supported. We are compassionate. So when you go searching around and you're trying to figure out what is truth, how do I interpret these signals? And you have this mantra installed inside of your heart, you can start looking at this mantra and seeing what you see in the world. And if there's resonance, what you see in the world will feel good. It'll feel happy. It'll feel joyful. It'll feel aligned. If you have a sacral, you'll be like, right? Your sacral will love it. If you encounter information and you're like, ugh, that's not, that, I don't resonate with that. That's not lining up with these words at all. Then that's not truth. And I believe our responsibility in the face of things that don't match the frequency of this truth is to shine that frequency into that untruth. Just hold it there for a second and go, wow, that's a person that's really hurting. That's why they posted that. They're really hurting. They must feel really unlovable. How can I send them a little bit of love? over here, here's a person that feels really disempowered. That's why they're fighting. How can I send this person more power? Use that conscious awareness of those unmet energy needs and those mistaken motivations and this truth of who we really are. And do your best to create for yourself your own perception of what is true for you. Be well, take care, and have a wonderful weekend.